Hello, everyone. Welcome back to another episode of Second and Saints. John Hendricks alongside Ross Jackson. It's been a long night. We were at Arrowhead and all that. And of course, depending on when you guys are checking us out and all that fun stuff, if you're here with us live, thank you for tuning in because it's like 2 a.m. where we're at. So in Central Time. But man, Ross, we're still kicking, breathing. And, we obviously need to talk about this team. But how's things going, man?
Yeah, no, man, I'm good. We're kicking, we're breathing. We're just trying to figure out if the New Orleans Saints still are, because that was a tough one, man. That was a real tough one for that team. But man, I'm doing good. I'm doing good. Hope you're holding up all right.
Yeah, man, I'm doing great. I don't have a 5 a.m. flight like you do, but no, but Ross is a trooper, man. That's when he thrives. Look, talking about this game, it's super disappointing, and I think the best way to describe it is disappointing in how they played. Really, like the fact that they came out and said that we didn't execute, we didn't do this, we got outplayed, we got outcoached. That's more concerning to me than losing to Kansas City. Like, I could understand you picked Kansas City 24-20. I picked them to win 24-20, all that fun stuff. You can go back on past episodes and all that stuff. But, I thought they had a chance. But they came out, they couldn't stop the run. Kareem Hunt's 29. He's been with his team for less than a month. And I get it. He's been with the Chiefs before, but Travis Kelce goes off. You can't get a pass rush going. You have the explosive plays given up. You have the big interception early. I mean, just pick it. You know what I mean? Like, it was just a bad football game and 3 straight losses. Man, what's your take on this game?
My take on this game is that I didn't expect the Saints to win, as you mentioned, but I didn't expect them to lose looking like that. And I think that that's kind of the biggest thing for me that I take away from this matchup. Saints didn't feel like, they felt like a team that was kind of a ship without a rudder. That was just out in the open water, and they got into the open water in really impressive fashion, but then just kind of lost everything over the course of this 3-game losing streak. And it's one thing to lose the 2-time Super Bowl champions. It's another thing to look like that. It's where you kind of looked hapless, kind of looked a little frantic, maybe a little bit panicked at times. Certainly that interception to start the game was that by Derek Carr. And then that kind of set the tone for the rest of the matchup. It just kind of felt like the Saints kind of started this game behind almost, and then never really got caught up, even though they did have some positives in this game. Their red zone defense was really good, but that's relative because it was 2 of 7. And anytime you give up 7 red zone possessions, that's pretty challenging and everything. So I don't know. This one just felt like a team that didn't really have the opportunity to play up to its standards, which is something that Dennis Allen said. And it certainly felt like that watching it.
Yeah, I don't know what standards was met, on the game. Like,
Right.
it was tough. Like, and you're right. I think that interception changed the game because I thought they were moving the football really well for, to start and, electing to receive and all that other stuff. But it's just like the Eric McCoy thing. It's just this team gets derailed so quickly and so frazzled. And I get it. They have fight. They stay in it and all that. But look, I'm legitimately concerned about this defense. Is really kind of where I'm at right now is that, I get it. The pick is one thing. You lost Derek Carr. We'll get into that. We'll talk about that more. But, the fact that they're not generating a pass rush, the fact that the run defense is looking sus and you're not able to get Mahomes down, like that was a problem. And this is another week where Dennis Allen talks about bad tackling. Like, at some point, something's got to give because this is, I guess if without being too crazy, if I go back to a loss from 2022, I can put on repeat the same things that have been said. Like, this is something that has been said for years. And so I'm wondering what's going to change because you're now you've lost 3 straight. Now you have to go deal with the Bucks and then the Broncos on the short week, and it's just defensively, man. Look, and I get it. People want to throw Paulson Adebo under the bus for that pass interference. Like that's a microcosm of everything else that's going wrong, right? Like it's not, the game was not because of Paulson Adebo with the pass interference. You know what I'm saying? Like there's just struggles all around the defensive front, struggles all around this team. What do you see? What did you see out of this defense?
Yeah, one of the biggest things two of the big things that kind of concern me about this defense right now come down to 2 different metrics. The first of which is yards before contact. You kind of mentioned that when it came to the inability to stop the run game and how successful Kareem Hunt was in the run game and all that. And I think that was a big thing. You saw the defensive line get moved off the line of scrimmage over and over and over again. No push in the run game consistently, 2 or 3 or 4 yards before contact. All the stuff that we've been saying about the New Orleans Saints run blocking early on in the season, you can say about what was done against the New Orleans Saints defensive line in this game. The second metric for me is yards after catch. 251 of Patrick Mahomes' 331 yards came after the catch in this game. 300 of his 331 passing yards came on passes of less than 10 yards from the line of scrimmage. This was a dink and dunk offense for Kansas City, and yet they still put up 331 passing yards. You got 130 passing yards by wide receiver Juju Smith-Schuster, who was let go by the New England Patriots, the worst team in the NFL, maybe. And everything that just showed back up in Kansas City. I mean, just like these are all things where when you look at this defense, you're typically accustomed to a more physical defense, a better run defense, all those other things. I think the good things we saw from the defense in the first 2 weeks were all kind of led by the fact that New Orleans was playing with comfortable leads. Over the course of the past 3 weeks, we've seen something different, right? Not those comfortable leads. And we've seen the New Orleans Saints defense fail to really be able to make stops, particularly in the second halves of games. We saw that again in this one. The Saints over the course of the past 3 games, 1 touchdown allowed in the first half that came in this game against Kansas City, but 4 touchdowns allowed in the second half, and a lot of those coming in the fourth quarter, which has been a big issue for New Orleans, is how much they've given up in that final quarter over on the defensive side of the football. That's hard to compete with.
Yeah, and look, I mean, Chase Young finally got a sack, but then I saw something on social media about a play where it looks like he was chasing Mahomes, and it just kind of like maybe pulled up at the end. And again, I'm not going to sit here and start anything like that. It's just like that's the course of the game. It could have been a lot of different things. Maybe he didn't want to go run into the quarterback, take a penalty, all this other stuff. But it's just like now that you've lost 3 straight, I think everything's on the table. Like you just look at everything that has happened, every play, and you're like, this is the problem. That's the problem. This is the problem. This is the problem. And of course, look, I was looking at it, and I think it turned to you, and I said that during the game, I'm like, they had rattled off 3 straight runs. Like it went for 8 yards, 7 yards, and they were getting gashed 4 yards, 6 yards. I mean, it was just like they had the success running the ball up the middle. Like they weren't beating it on the outside. They were just running it up the gut with their offensive line, and they were just taking it to the Saints defense. And, they just didn't have any answers, and they had chances to get after Mahomes. They had chances to bring him down, chances to make him not be magical. And look, I didn't think Mahomes was completely spectacular like he normally is in some of these days. Like I thought this could have been a winnable game for the New Orleans based on how Chiefs played if they would have shored up a few things, and it could have been different. But again, they are what their record says. It's tough because you didn't have Willie Gay Jr., you didn't have Pete Warner, and of course injuries are part of the game. Nobody cares.
Sure.
And you can't make excuses. I mean, it could have helped. I think Colin Saunders picking the end zone was a big momentum shift, but it's just you do everything offensively and you go down the length of the field and cut the game within 3 points, and then you immediately give up a touchdown drive. I think that was the killer, is that another explosive play across the middle, wide open. Like you did a really good job on Kelsey in the second half, but giving up that explosive play, like you said, to Juju Smith-Schuster and all these other things, and then the Xavier Worthy stuff is just like, man, where does this defense go from here? Because now you got Baker Mayfield, Mike Evans. They just hung a lot of points on the Falcons. I get it. They didn't lose, or they didn't win the game, but you're not going to go back to a soft serve offense that this defense is going to have to produce.
Yeah, I mean, this is going to be tough, man. I mean, this isn't going to get any easier for them. And then once they come off of that Tampa Bay Buccaneers game, they go against a Denver Broncos team that has been phenomenal over on the defensive side of the football. So then you have to rely on your defense to be able to like keep things kind of manageable for your offense in that situation. That's going to be really tough. I also think that this is a team that's proven that at least as of right now, it does not have the capability or wherewithal to be able to navigate situations where things aren't going perfectly in their favor. You mentioned the Eric McCoy injury that happened 3 snaps into the game against Philly. Then you look at last week, the fumble that ended up turning into a touchdown on the punt return. That was the Saints' first touch of that game. Then you get the interception here with Derek Carr. The moment that something goes wrong early in these games, it has set the tone for what the rest of the game has looked like. We watched Derek Carr continuously have to throw off of his back foot, pressure, making bad decisions, all these other things that he highlighted after the game as well. And so to come off of that and to know that you have to go up against an active blitzing defense with a hurt offensive line with Tampa Bay on the way, a really solid defense with the Denver Broncos. You just can't trust that you can ride your defense to wins anymore. New Orleans hasn't proven that they can do that. They've proven that they can lose a lot of ways. They haven't proven that they can win any way but things going perfectly for them. And I think that that's the thing that should be most concerning about this team. I'm with you, buddy. Like the fact that they lost this game to the Kansas City Chiefs doesn't really matter to me. It's the way that they looked in the loss that I think is the thing that should be most frightening for Saints fans.
Yeah, and look, I don't know how many episodes ago I said it. I said, and I stick by this until I'm proven otherwise. They're just not a team that benefits unless they play complementary football. If they can't have it go their way in all the phases, they can't win a game. And I don't understand for the life of me why that is. Like, again, it could be coaching, it'd be game plan, but it's like after a loss, you're just looking at it and looking at all the pieces and saying, okay, what's the problem here? You know, and you got to hear the speak talk. The coaching's got to be better. I got to be better. All this other stuff. I understand, but like what specifically is going to be better? You know what I mean? Like what exactly is going to change so you don't have this slow start, this bad look, this all the stuff that's happening. And so I don't know. It's just a tough one for Saints fans to kind of a tough pill to swallow tonight. And look, I think that, you know, you're still 5 games in the season. The good news is your whole season's ahead of you, but they got some real problems on their hands on the offensive side of the football. And we'll get into that here in just a second after you hear from our sponsor, Underdog Fantasy. Hey, folks, John Hendricks here from Second and Saints. Look, we know it's the greatest time of the year again. Football's back, and it's here to stay until February. Look, over 1 million fans across 33 states got in a game last year by making picks on Underdog. Win up to 1,000 times your money just by choosing higher or lower on your favorite player's stats, whether it's touchdowns, passing yards, and much more. Who doesn't like apps? And Underdog has a real easy app to use. But if you're like me, I like to use a website too. So when I want to look at more stats for a game or look at splits for Alvin Kamara, this is a good site for us to go check all of that information out. Making picks on Underdog is straightforward and signing up is even easier. Just head over to Underdog's simple-to-use mobile app or UnderdogFantasy.com, sign up with promo code SecondSaints, and Underdog will give you a free pick to use on your first cash pick'em entry plus up to $1,000 in bonus cash when you deposit. That's Underdog Fantasy, promo code SecondSaints to claim your new customer special of a free pick and your deposit offer. You must be 18 or older and present in a state where Underdog Fantasy operates. Terms apply. Void in Colorado. Concerned with your play? Call 1-800-GAMBLER or visit www.ncpgambling.org. Arizona, 1-800-NEXT-STEP, 1-800-639-8783, or text NEXT-STEP to 53342. New York, call the 24/7 Hope line at 1-877-8-HOPE-NY or text HOPE-NY 467-369. I love Underdog because it's so easy to use and it's so fast to get started and play. Sign up process is really smooth and they have a slick mobile app. So what are you waiting for? Go check out Underdog today. Use that code SecondSaints and we'll see you in the game. All right, guys. Thanks for sticking with us. Saints breaking down this offense now 26-13, just not even remotely good enough tonight, right? And offensively, we moved to them and kind of put them under the microscope. Well, I guess we start with the big one, right? Derek
Yeah,
Carr, oblique injury is what it's called. He did not look good after the game. Like, he just did not sound himself. And the problem with that now is that, it wasn't even the hit, he said,
right.
that was what injured him. He said he went back to throw, and then that's where he went to torque, and then he had the problem, right? So he's going
Yep.
to have further imaging. He's going to get checked out on Tuesday, which is the day we're actually doing the show, but
Now.
like later now, yeah, now doing MRI. And look, injuries aren't going to really slow him down, but the fact that he is injured, and you saw Jake Haener come in a little bit, and now the question is Derek Carr going to play? And look, this is what I know about Derek Carr. If he can get himself right, even if he isn't 100%, he's going to
Oh yeah.
play. Now, whether that hurts his team or not, we'll see. But disappointing that you lose a game again. And not only did he get hurt, but Will Harris got hurt with a hamstring injury, another soft tissue
Yep.
injury.
No soft tissue injury.
But that's the big focal point. Derek Carr got hurt, and now, I mean, he made some history tonight. He joined an elite club, 40,000 yards, 250 touchdown passes. He became 24th quarterback to actually do that. Joe Flacco was 23. He actually did that on Sunday, believe it or not. But
Nice.
all that stuff gets overshadowed because he's injured and they lost. But your thoughts?
Yeah, I mean it's a scary thing when it comes to this one, because it was one of the things that you probably heard me. We were talking back and forth with a couple other folks. We were talking about, like, where did the injury actually take place? Did it happen when he impacted the ground, or did it happen when he kind of reared back off of that back foot throw and hauled off on that pass that slipped through Mason Tipton's hands, or arms rather? The reason why I pointed that out is because an impact injury probably would have been better, like an injury of
Yeah.
him landing on a hip or something like that. If it was a bruise or a contact bruise, something like that, that probably would have been better. But something like this, where it's muscular and it affects your ability to be able to turn your body and control your core, that's huge for a quarterback. So this ends up being now the second year in a row where you come off of a tough loss, and potentially and you have an injury to your quarterback. Now, last year when this happened, it was against Green Bay week 3. He missed the second half, but then came back, and you could tell that he wasn't himself. And then you could
Yeah.
tell he wasn't himself until much later on in the season, after a couple of other injuries ended up setting in the meanwhile. So now you have to be concerned about compounding this situation. And New Orleans has been very sort of cautious when it comes to injuries so far this year. It's kind of quote unquote saving guys from themselves. Are they going to do that with Derek Carr? Or because Derek Carr is going to give you the best chance to win your football games, does he end up being treated a little bit differently in that situation? And then what does that end up meaning for him? So this is a really challenging one for the New Orleans Saints to navigate, because Jake Haener, Spencer Rattler, both very talented, both guys that the New Orleans Saints are high on, but I wonder if this is one of those situations to where, because you kept the competition going, you didn't commit to one of these guys as your backup quarterback in practices and things like that. Did that end up having an impact in terms of you being able to get one of these guys ready to go in place of Derek Carr? Now, we've seen that it's been Jake Haener every week so far when it comes to QB2 conversation. I would expect that that's who they turn to.
Yep.
So maybe he's getting more reps in practice than what we're seeing, or what we have the ability to see when we're there, because we don't really get to see all of practice, as John's mentioned before. Maybe. And so maybe that gives you a little bit more solace if you're, for the New Orleans Saints. But man, this becomes really, really tough if you end up losing Derek Carr for a game, 2 games, multiple games, whatever it is. That ends up putting a big time stain on this season and your ability to turn things around, because you kind of have to turn things around, starting with Tampa in a big division matchup next week.
Yeah. And look, we said the schedule, quote unquote, gets easier. I don't know if that's the case, because you look at teams like Washington who are playing extremely well right now, and other teams. I mean, what you look at the schedule, they can probably beat up on the bad teams. You know what I mean? Like, they could get there. They could beat up on the Browns. They could beat up on the Panthers again. Like, you could find some wins, but again, this is going to be another thing where can you beat the better teams right now? And Tampa's probably a better team than they are. And I get it. Like, but they are what their record says, right? Like, you can say, like he said afterwards, Carr, that is, that, the leaders have talked about how they can't keep snowballing and it's got to stop, all these other things. It wasn't like this big kumbaya moment, come to Jesus moment or anything like that. But it was just one of those things where nobody's pointing the fingers. Nobody
Mhm.
is everybody's still tight, good unity in the locker room. So it's not to that point. Like I think when we covered the Pittsburgh game, that felt like when everything fell out, right? Like we
Yeah.
just knew that was the locker room and that it just kind of like went bad. But don't get the sense here. I know it's disappointing, and this team, feels like they should be a lot better than what they are. But I just what's concerning too is you were already down your starting center. So they put Lucas Patrick there, which he was
Mhm.
playing hurt. Like, I mean, legitimately, you could see him just not being right at a point and him kind of like hobbling a little bit. And then they turned to Nick Saldiveri at left guard. They ended up pulling him after you
Mhm.
pointed out Lucas Patrick went to the locker room with trainers. And then Lucas Patrick back out and plays left guard. And then he turned to Connor McGovern at center, who's been on the team less than several days. And so it's just like, I didn't like the fact that they kept play calls going up the middle with Chris Jones on the other side. Like, and it wasn't just him that was blowing it up, but like some of the outside stuff worked. Like that first run by Kamara where it didn't have anything on the outside, and then he was able to turn it around. That was good, but the runs inside, it just weren't there. And so I guess my biggest thing is why stick with those, or just could they just not run on the outside?
Yeah, I think a lot of this game was dictated by Kansas City's defensive line being able to kind of get the edge in the outside zone game. Because what will happen is that you'll set up, these runs to those C gaps towards the outside. You're trying to get outside the tackle and the tight end, if you will, and all that. And if that run isn't there, then you cut back to the inside, and then you have to take the inside run. And there were a few runs that were designed to go inside, but I think there were a lot of runs that were designed to go outside, but the Kansas City Chiefs just did a very good job of setting that edge and then forcing Alvin Kamara right back up the middle and forcing him back to Chris Jones and that defensive interior. It doesn't mean that a tackle got beat on the outside. It's just about where is the physical body of the defensive end. And if that body of the defensive end is on the outside of that tackle, then the read is going to force you back inside. And that's been something that Philly did a really good job against. And now we've seen Kansas City do a really good job with kind of forcing Alvin Kamara back towards the inside as well. So some of it is some of the play calling, but under most circumstances in this one, it felt like Kansas City just did a much better job defending the run. And that's not super surprising either. Kansas City was number 7 in the NFL at 3.55 yards per carry in defending the zone run. They're really, really good at it. And New Orleans again shows that if they can't get their zone run game going, then the rest of the offense never falls into place either. And I think that's a major detriment for this team right now.
Yeah, I mean, you see, they missed Taysom Hill. They missed Kendre
Mhm.
Miller, which I know he was. And the thing is, I know people were kind of up in arms. It's like, well, he practiced fully. Look, I think that has more to do with him and being behind in the playbook and getting into football shape. Like, I'll just say
Mhm.
that's
Completely agreed.
more the byproduct there. And so he'll get there soon enough. I mean, they got this 21-day window to activate him, so I never got the sense that he was going to get activated or anything. But that'll hopefully help. But now it's the injuries are obviously concerned with Derek Carr, and then the offensive line. It is what it is when it comes to it. And then talking about some good things like the bomb to Rashid Shaheed. I thought he had a really good
Mhm.
game, honestly. Bright spot there. I thought the drive when they got back into it with Foster Moreau and that touchdown drive was a good thing. The big thing here is Chris Olave getting like not many targets.
Mhm.
Are you concerned by that? Because I know a lot of people are like, why aren't they throwing it to Chris Olave?
Yeah, I think Kansas City did a good job of taking him away, but at the same time, like we also saw the Saints kind of go away from him in a couple of occasions. Like that 4th and 8, when you have a cover zero look and you have this pressure coming up the middle, and then you end up launching the ball up on a one-on-one opportunity on the sole side. y- And that's your undrafted free agent rookie wide receiver when you have a guy like Chris Olave that should have been the first read, if I may say so, on that type of play, then like that's a play caller, play design type of a thing, right? Like that's that kind of decision making. And Derek Carr told us like Tipton was the first read in that situation. And so when you get that cover zero look and you get that blitz up the middle, that's who you're going to. And the fact that that wasn't Chris Olave kind of baffles me in a way, because it kind of takes me back to in-game situations where the Saints in previous years haven't even had Chris Olave and Rashid Shaheed on the field. Now, at least that wasn't the case here. But in an in-game situation and in a very, very, necessary need to have play to extend your drive, that pass has got to go to 12. There's no reason for that pass to be going to, an undrafted rookie free agent that I get it. Everyone's excited about, and that he had a great camp and all these other things. But you go to your guy in that situation. And that was something that Derek Carr talked about last week, about how much he trusts Chris Olave and how much, he wants to be able to go to him in those situations. And then so to have to go away from him because the other guy is your first read, that is just baffling to me.
Yeah, I think another thing for me too is, and I'm not saying it would make this offense better, but like again, something I pointed out to you, the times that Dallin Holker was in the pre-huddle and then he'd get sub right off. You know what I'm saying? Like, why is he not an option in passing game at this point? Or why is it not Bub Means an option in this passing in this thing? And look, I mean, not to segue off this game, but Davante Adams, that trade talk is big. And I reported earlier that earlier being Monday that, there was some things riding on this game. This was pretty telling for this team, whether they needed to address the offensive line or they might make a push for Davante Adams. I mean, I was told that they felt really good about it. They felt pretty close on that, and they feel like they could land him, but now it's just one of those situations where it's like, especially if Carr's going down with the injury, I don't know if that's even on the table. And I don't know that Davante Adams is going to help your team, but we talked about this last week, and the lack of weapons this team actually has right now is the fact that that's something Dennis Allen said last week. And it doesn't show up again this week. Like you got a few things extra from Juwan this week. You got the touchdown to Foster, but outside of that, it's just, you just know where the ball's going to end up going. And when it works, it's great. But when you need something to go your way and to do, then it's kind of hard to find that when you don't have it on your team.
Yeah. Well, I would say that on 4th and 8, I'd rather that ball be going to a guy like Davante Adams, you know what I mean?
Sure.
Than a rookie who's still adjusting to the NFL and is still kind of like learning things and stuff like that. Like I'm not trying to be disparaging of Mason Tipton here. Like he's a player that's trying to make it work for himself, and he's doing a really good job of it. He deserves a lot of respect, but that's not typically your go-to guy in this situation. I guess I'd rather that ball be going to Davante Adams in that situation if it's not going to be Chris Olave in that situation. But yeah, I don't know. There's just a lot of questionable stuff. And then, to win the coin toss and then decide that you're going to receive, I don't hate that decision.
No.
It just ended up biting them the wrong way, as things so often do for this team for whatever reason, because it's the first time this season that New Orleans didn't score on their opening drive. And that's compounded with the first time that Kansas City kept a team from scoring on their opening drive. So just not the start that the Saints wanted. And then they end up, not being able to hold on to the ball and run the first half out. So then Kansas City gets some extra points in there before they get the ball back to start the second half. And so it's just all piled up so quickly. I think that's one of the reasons why I mentioned that this team felt very reactive in this game, is because so much of maybe what they planned to do didn't work out. And it just didn't feel like they ever really had an established counterpunch or counterpoint to go to. It was just, this is what we're going to do. And then that didn't happen, and they had nowhere to go from there, it felt like.
Yeah, Derek Carr saying after the game they called that throw a boneheaded decision. And look, I mean, that's good, and it's nice that he would recognize that. But and look, I thought Kamara picked up that block. Like I think he had time.
Oh, yeah.
And you mentioned Tipton. There was one of the ones, and I said this, and it was a third down play, and people were saying, "Why did you call slant?" I'm pretty sure he bumped into Chris Olave on the route, like when he was getting off on the route. But if he gets him in stride, that's a big play, and that's actually a first down instead of what they had. And look, I know they're going to learn from it. I know they have a lot of time. The biggest thing is, can they figure it out before it's too late again? You know what I mean? Like we've done this same old song and dance again. You can't wait until week 12 to say, all right, we're going to start playing Saints football, and you're 4-8, you know what I mean?
Right.
Or whatever the case. I mean, you just can't do this again. And so I think that's the biggest question. You got 2 games in a matter of days apart, and you get a mini bye, but I'm gonna tell you, they gotta find a way against the Bucks. They just have to.
Have to.
Like, come hell or high water, you gotta win this game. And you can't afford to really lose to Denver. I mean, you can maybe split that one. The Denver loss doesn't hurt you as much, even though Sean Payton's in town. You want to win that game, but you can't lose to the Bucks on Sunday. But
Yep.
it's tough. Even with the loss, man, I guess game balls, offense, pretty easy, I think, for me. It's got to be Shaheed with the way he
Yeah.
played out there. I don't know if there's anybody else I recommend only game ball to Rashid Shaheed. And it's not going right when Blake Groupie misses another extra point. His second miss.
Yeah.
And he missed none last year. Like, you just know it's not going right for that. You know what I mean? Or the Jamal Williams return where he's, it looked like he was going to bring it out, not bring it out, and then he has to bring it out. Like, it's just that's the type of stuff that hurts this team. Any other opposing thoughts on the offense and game balls?
No, I think that's exactly right. Like, that's the guy you got to go for in Shaheed.
Yeah.
He had the best game over on the offensive side. I was trying to look and see if maybe I can get like pressure numbers or something like that when it came to Taliesin Fuanga, just because I'm curious about how he played over on that right side, or on that left side, excuse me. Because he looked like he had a solid game, but I want to see the numbers that are attached to that too. Kansas City, 19 total pressures in this game, I believe it was, by the time it was all said and done as well. So not great there, but yeah, so I would have to go with Rashid Shaheed on that for sure.
Yeah, I think Fuanga would probably be another one but of course, look at the tape and see what actually happened. But it's hard when it's the loss like that, and you see how things play out. It's just not much to celebrate there. And defensively, look, I mean, it's another tough one. I thought Alontae Taylor is playing pretty well. I thought Marshawn, again, they don't test him. You know what I'm saying? Like, the only time I think I heard his name was a holding penalty that got wiped out, because I think that was the pass interference play to Paulson Adebo. It was good to see Chase Young get a sack. It was good to see Brian Brzee get a sack. Bink probably gets honorable mention, or he probably gets. I think he gets a game ball, because that kick in return was pretty awesome. And, I think he played up a level, like he made several tackles. I think he had some pressures on there. Like, I think he played pretty well. What about you?
Yeah, no, I was going to say Bink too. I mean, he's the guy that made the biggest play over on defense. He actually, with that interception, impacted the win percentage opportunity for New Orleans. I think it went to like +9. I think he boosted it nearly 10 percent points with that interception and the 37-yard return to go with it, which is really impressive. Yeah, he became the third fastest player of over 320 pounds clocked by Next Gen Stats since 2016. Pretty impressive in terms of that. But so I would definitely give the game ball to Bink over on the defensive side.
Yeah, I wish I'd remember. I think it was Stats. I can't remember his exact handle, but shout out to him. I think it's Drew. He showed me a stat and tweeted out talent stats. Yes.
Mm-hmm.
He sent out the that's the longest defensive lineman return for an interception. Sheldon Rankins did it in 2017. Like, that's pretty impressive, and he did 37 yards. I'm like, okay, that's pretty good. Go ahead, Bink. And so, look, hopefully it continues, and hopefully we can celebrate more good than bad coming up. But it's going to be tough. Bucks are in town. They're going to be in New Orleans. And look, if anybody's in this hurricane in Florida, golly,
yes,
I hope you can get out, because this is nothing to play around with, y'all. Like, I mean, legitimately hope you guys find some solace. But, that's tough. But don't want to end on that note. Ross, of course, what's coming up at LouisianaSports.net, and what is coming up on Locked On? Plenty, I'm sure.
Yeah, I've got my my column coming out in the morning, the later morning, which will be all about who are the New Orleans Saints. I don't know that we know who this team is anymore, and they've got about a little bit of time left to prove it. So so we'll definitely have that there. You can find the Locked On Saints podcast, where we did our post-game show afterwards, and then I'll dive in a little bit more like analytics, film, stuff like that. I want to look and see, like, what did Kansas City do against the New Orleans Saints run game? Was it the same thing that Philly did, or some version of it, or did they find another way maybe to limit it? So break all that down as well. And maybe it just comes down to a hurt offensive line, but the film won't lie. So we'll take a look at all that and have that for you over at Locked On Saints. What you got coming up, buddy?
And plenty, my post game column was pretty much, the Saints are in free fall, and I don't think there's anything that's going to slow them down anytime soon. So I think that's my biggest thing right now. And
Mhm.
of course, we'll look at snap counts. We'll look at all the fun stuff that's coming through. And of course, it's a shorter week, so we got to turn quickly to Tampa
Yep.
here and stuff. But yeah, it's it's tough. I know they've lost some close games. I know they had. I think this is probably one of the more disappointing losses I've covered in for this team in quite a while. Like I
Yeah.
don't know what comes to
Which is
mind
shocking because
offhand.
it's like they were supposed to lose this game.
Yeah,
It's just the way they
yeah,
did it.
yeah. It's just find a way. I guess I don't know. It's just tough, but yeah. All right. Well, guys, I see a whole bunch of you all on the live stream. Shout out to y'all for staying up
Wild.
this late. Maybe some of you guys are on the West Coast, but still, it's late. Thanks for your support and all that. And don't
For
forget to hit
real.
the like, subscribe button, and we'll have plenty more coming here on Second and Saints. But that is going to do it for us. I'd say Ross is going to go get some sleep, but he's not because he's got a flight to
Nah.
catch in about a couple hours. And I'm not joking by that, but I will actually get some sleep and we'll come back at you and talk some more Saints. So appreciate you guys tuning in. Thanks so much. Visit all those links. Help support the show. Appreciate y'all so much. And y'all have a good night or good day or good morning, whatever time you're tuning in. Thanks, guys. Have a good one.
Love you.